everybody, and welcome back to Sorry I Missed This, the show where we talk about all things ADHD and its impact on relationships, intimacy, communication, and even sex. It's me, your host, Kate Osborne, and on today's episode, we are talking about the pros and cons, the pitfalls, the upsides of online dating when you have ADHD. Today's guest is Dr. Shauna Pollard. She is a psychologist based in Georgia who happens, very conveniently, to be an expert in online dating and supports a ton of different clients with a ton of different neurodivergencies. And I'm so excited to introduce her to you later on in the show. I have to admit to you, dear listener, that I have been guilty of a lot of the pitfalls that you're going to hear Dr. Shauna and I talk about in today's episode. I have absolutely been the person with ADHD who throws myself into dating apps and gets a million different matches and then lets them fizzle out slowly one at a time, or goes on several perhaps ill-advised and what's the word I'm looking for? Impulsively uncontrolled dates that maybe didn't go so well. So while I love online dating and I think that it provides a really accessible avenue for a lot of different folks to meet people, to make new friends, to even potentially meet new partners, I know from personal experience that there are also a lot of pitfalls. And there's some stuff that you need to watch out for, especially if you are a person with ADHD. That is what Dr. Shauna and I are going to talk about today. Shauna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kate. I'm so glad to be here. This is such an exciting topic that we're talking about.
We are talking about online dating and ADHD. Let me ask you this right at the top. Do you think that online dating is challenging for people with ADHD?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like a kid in the candy store. There's so much stimulation coming from so many different areas, so many options. We like to focus on a lot of things at once, and we actually have trouble narrowing our attention just to focus on a single thing at a time. So if you imagine dating apps, it's overwhelming. It's very stimulating. There's lots to choose from. There's lots to think about. What do I write on my profile, or what am I looking for? And you can walk in looking for one thing and walk out with something else that you didn't plan to look for. That's how much stuff is going on these apps.
Well, it's really interesting, too, because when I first started putting this episode together, the first question that I had for you was, why do you think that online dating has become so ubiquitous, right? But then one of our wonderful producers was like, actually, online dating is on decline. It's not as popular as it was. And so I'm curious, do you think it has something to do with kind of what you just talked about?
I know when I kind of started to have it on my radar, it's probably 2007, 2008. It was very different than it was. I think when people went on there, they were really looking for relationships. There was a lot more authenticity because it wasn't as popular. I think the more it got popularized, the more it got mainstream. You have all kinds of people on there, and the technology around it has changed so much where I will say it's a lot more low effort to get on a dating app, or there weren't apps per se before. It'd be like eHarmony, right? And they had you fill out lots of questions. You had to pay money. And then, there were levels before you could match with someone. It'd be like, first you could see their profile, then you might do a phone call. And so now all you have to do is click a button and it links your Facebook app and go, right? And so that changes the energy, the dynamics, the seriousness of who's on the apps. So I think now that everyone's doing it, I mean, the question is, what even is a dating app, right? Is it a dating app? Or is it an app that people go on where they're looking for a variety of things and dating is just one of them? It also depends on what do you mean by dating, right? So I've kind of gotten off track with your question, but I think the nature...
Welcome to the podcast, hey.
I think the nature of what people are getting versus what they have wanted has sort of changed as it's opened up, it become more ubiquitous and become more easy for everyone to join. And then a lot of people just aren't satisfied with what they're finding on the apps. And so people are becoming disenfranchised with them. And they're like, I don't want to use the apps anymore.
I have briefly forayed into online dating, and I find it wildly difficult. And I don't know if it is because specifically of my ADHD or if it is just because of like who I am inherently as a person. So I was wondering if you could talk about the ways in which navigating online dating with ADHD can sort of make the process more daunting, more challenging, just generally more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to pay attention to, right? There's certain apps that limit how many interactions you can have a day or, um, how you could interact with people. Others, it's wide open. And so you're getting pinged all day long, maybe, right? Or even if you're not getting pinged, you might be checking all day long. The same challenges that people have with social media. You might not be thinking about the dating apps. You might be living your life and doing great, but all of a sudden you get a ping, and then that's where your distraction goes. That's one thing, is it is another drag on your attention. The other thing is sometimes people walk into dating apps saying like, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that in a relationship. But then if nobody's approaching them with that thing, then they're like, well, maybe I could like this, or maybe I'm open to this, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or, like I might not have dated this person, but this is the only person that's like messaged me.
I mean, that very specifically reminds me of conversations that we've had on the podcast before about how a lot of women with ADHD in particular will sort of change themselves to be what they perceive that their partner wants. And I imagine that if you're on a bunch of different dating apps trying to be a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people, that could be exhausting. That could be emotionally, I don't want to say devastating, but it's emotionally something at least.
Yeah. It can be overwhelming to figure out what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you want, and then also what it is that's available. And that's where I think a lot of the work with dating apps, for me, with the clients that I work with, is reflecting back where there's other work to be done that really doesn't involve the apps, right? Because I think the more that you're very clear and very centered about what you're looking for, and what you need out of your dating experiences, the better your experience will be on the app. I think the more that you're sort of, I don't know, exploratory, it can be overwhelming to figure out that through the apps. Yeah, there's so many dynamics that ADHDers experience with the apps. I think that sometimes attachment issues can be a challenge for ADHDers in the sense that like, the relationships that you've had earlier in life shape your relationships currently, whether you're more anxious in your relationships or whether you avoid, close connection or intimacy, those can get aggravated by dating apps. And I think it's interesting because sometimes ADHDers can look like they're more anxiously attached, but they're more being driven by like the dopamine hit of using an app than their actual like for the other person. And I think that could go both ways. You might think, oh, this person's really into me, like they're responding all of the time or they're always on the app, but they also just might be, a little bit addicted to the app or like the engagement of the app rather than you as a person. So I think it's worthwhile to know like the experience you have on the app, you need to get off the app at some point and experience them in real life.
It's so interesting that you brought that up because that's one of the number one questions that I get asked from ADHDers is that idea of when you meet somebody new and you're having that like new relationship energy and you're in that moment of like, oh, we're getting to know each other and it's super exciting. So you're talking all the time. And then it's been like a couple of weeks and then you get burnt out and you're kind of tired. And then you kind of forget to message them one day and then you just ghost them out of nowhere. And it's like, what happened? And so I think being really aware of that and taking accountability and responsibility for the ways that ADHD can impact our ability to communicate and create successful relationships with other people, that's also really important to remember that there is another person on the end of that dating app. It's not TikTok, it's not whatever. It's just a real person who you're interacting with.
Even without the apps, a lot of ADHDers get into this hyper-focused state at the beginning of the relationship. And then the other person likes that. They're like, I like this person that's all into me and that's, texting all the time and calling all the time. And they don't like the person that you are once that phase is over.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes you promise things that you can't maintain.
Yeah.
Um,
What is it? It's overpromise and underdeliver. Is that what it is?
yeah, yeah. And I
In
think that's the downside of the apps is that
Yeah.
like I think they encourage like hyper accelerated relationship building.
Hmm.
Like everything, like, oh, let's go out on a date immediately. First date, second
Yeah.
date, third date. And some people benefit from a more paced experience.
If you are one of those people who benefits from that slower burn or that, really intentional, really focused getting to know each other period, do you have any best practices or ideas to support the person who's listening at home?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, tell them. Just say, like, I like to take it slow, you know, and just kind of like my big thing about managing ADHD is understanding yourself, understanding your symptoms and how they show up. So, and then being able to communicate that to other people and
Hmm.
just say, like, I like to take my time getting to know someone. Like, I don't like to be rushed. Honor your boundaries. My recommendation for folks is to date mindfully and to give yourself enough time to tune in to how you're feeling at every stage in the process. How you're feeling after you message them through the app. Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Do you feel rushed? Do you feel pressured? Do you feel worn out? Do you feel, drained after talking to a
Yeah.
person? Or do you feel energized, lighter, hopeful? And so do that after you do the exchanges on the app. Do that after you do a phone call. Do that after you do a first date. That will give you feedback about, where you want to go. And then as you have information, like if you went out and it was a whirlwind and it felt too fast, you can just say, like, I need to slow this down a little bit. This is really fast for me. So I think it's just recognizing that, like, a dating dynamic is always two people and you can influence the pace. And if the other person isn't respectful or responsive to that, then that gives you a lot of feedback about who you're dealing with.
It's interesting that dating apps not only sort of pigeonhole us, but then we're immediately pigeonholing others. And that
Yeah.
that feels bad. That feels bad to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it can feel bad because the answer is you don't really know. And that's the challenge with online dating. It's only as good as a person's ability to market themselves well. And that's why I often encourage people to make online dating a communal experience
Hmm.
and have friends look at your profile and give you feedback. And it's like, does this match the version of you that they know? It also, you can have friends look at your matches. Like, obviously, you're going to make the final decisions, but it
Yeah.
can kind of help you to get past some of that.
I struggle with the idea of having to pigeonhole myself or like leave something out because, you only have one box to fill out. But I'm like, no, actually, I have 5 jobs or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And I know that that's really common with a lot of ADHDers. So, do you have any thoughts on how to authentically represent yourself when you're creating an online dating profile if you're really worried about that sort of pigeonholing element?
I think sometimes it's helpful to think about what you're looking for in a match. What are the first few things that you want them to know about you, or what is something that you hope that you're a passion that you hope your partner will share with you? So if you love to go to concerts by a certain artist, it might be helpful to put that in there. Things that like differentiate you from other people. Also, like, what are the things where, like, when people think about you, this is what they always think about. Or you can always think about what has worked out well in your relationships to have and what has not worked out well. And those are things that you can kind of lead with in your profile. And you could also test different profiles. I mean, I'm a researcher, so you can see how it feels if you have certain things up. You can pay attention to the kinds of matches you get. You could also argue that, like, is the point of online dating to get a lot of matches, or is it just to get like one match that fits? But the argument typically is like you want a lot of matches so you can work your way through those to find one that fits.
I'm interested to see how different sexualities and genders and stuff show up. Because like for me personally, like I really consider myself like demisexual more than anything else. And so for me, like if I'm on a dating app, I'm not looking for a one night stand. I'm not looking for a hookup. I'm not looking for something like that. And I know that that has become sort of part of the online dating culture. So if you are a person who is, maybe looking for just one or two matches, I imagine that must be much more difficult to navigate through the field of almost like a popularity contest or like trying to get as many matches as you can.
Well, I think you have to have a strategy for how you filter, right? The idea is not necessarily that you go out with all of those matches, but the more people that are a match for you in the app, then you can use those first few conversations to start to filter out like who would you actually want to go out on a date with. I think with online dating, you have to have a filter. So I always tell people you kind of want to have external things that you're requesting. Like, if you're looking for someone else who is also demi, then you would say that. And then out of those matches, then you can filter for the other things that like you don't necessarily have on your profile. Like, do we share the same values? Like, I think values is one of the important ones to filter out for that. Like, you can't necessarily, sometimes you can call it out or kind of label what you're looking for, but a lot of it is just kind of in conversation, getting to know someone.
Ultimately, we are making a lot of snap judgments. We're based on a picture and like a very short profile. And the other thing is that I'm very photogenic, right? Like I know that I'm a very photogenic person. So my pictures look great, but in reality, I'm pretty much a gremlin all the time. And so as, you're navigating through this world of online dating, how do you get past those sort of snap judgments and get to that place of real, authentic communication and connection with the people that you're trying to reach out and communicate with?
Yeah, well, one thing to say is I often encourage people to not have online dating be their only dating strategy.
Okay.
Because that gets rid of some of that. So you should be trying to meet people in real life too. And so the nice thing about offline dating is that it gives you a chance to go a little bit deeper than those snap judgments. It gets you to really know people and really figure out, like maybe I had an initial read on them, but it wasn't accurate. I think you should practice going a different direction than what you haven't had success with. So if you're a snap judgment person and you're not getting any dates, then you want to try to play the other side where you kind of lower the threshold a little bit and kind of talk to more people and see how that feels. If you go out with anyone who seems interesting and that feels overwhelming, then you want to go the other way and maybe be a little more judgmental. So I kind of encourage people to think about what you've tried, think about what hasn't worked, and then you might want to try the reverse.
There's been a lot of conversation on dating apps about different ways that we find people, right? And so some of those snap judgments can be based on personal choices, but sometimes they can also be based on like algorithmic choices. Who is the algorithm showing us?
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering if things like discrimination or stereotyping can affect the experience of online dating.
Absolutely, they can. I mean, it's been researched that certain groups have less success on the dating apps and probably have to get support around like a different approach or even a more targeted app. I think the last thing I was looking at talked about like Asian men and Black women having kind of more challenges than the general population. And so it might mean you might need to tweak your approach, maybe be more targeted in who you're trying to talk to or who's talking to you. You might need to write things that suggest that you're more open to the general population. Or if by the other side of it, like you're Asian man and you know that you want to date an Asian woman, then you might want to get on an app where there's a high population of Asian folks there. So yeah, I think the discrimination is that, and there's all kinds of discrimination. There's discrimination based on size. Again, it might just be playing around with different apps. And I've noticed a difference in different apps. There's some apps where I have gotten more attention on those apps and it's very clear. I know like in the past, some neurodivergent folks have found like OkCupid to be more helpful. So it's just kind of staying aware of what are those niche apps where people who have your same characteristics are having success and are having lots of luck on the apps, you know? So,
Yeah. It is one reason why I am obsessed with the concept of farmers only. I'm like, good job, guys.
exactly.
Like, yeah,
Right.
go find yourself a farmer.
Right.
Get it.
They said, hey, we're not having the best success on these mainstream apps. Let's do our own. And so that's the thing. There's a lot of little niche apps. So I think you should always test out like a big app and also a more niche app.
Do you have suggestions for the ADHDer who is listening at home going, that sounds like a lot. I don't want to have to create 5 different profiles on 3 different data. I just want to like, what do I do? I'm overwhelmed.
Do what feels best for you, right? So I know plenty of people who have found love on the dating apps, but as a therapist and also just as a human, I know many people who have not. And if you feel like you're one of the people it doesn't work for, you can either get help, like from a dating coach, or you could hire a matchmaker that's going to kind of cut out all of that, like, you know, having to check the apps constantly and kind of pay attention. You can do things like change your notifications so that you're not getting notifications constantly. You can put things in your profile like, I don't check this regularly, you know, shoot me an email if you want to connect. You cannot use the dating apps if you don't like them. Or I often will encourage people to take a break. Some people get burnout.
Another question that we get a lot here at Sorry I Missed This is the topic of disclosure, telling people that you have ADHD or you are neurodivergent in some other way.
Sure.
And there's some people who strongly advocate for like telling them right off the bat. There's some people who like to wait until, you know, like a more, you know each other a little bit better. Do you have thoughts on it? I have my own opinions, but I don't know. I'm just curious to see what yours are.
I have this thought across the board, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit private in some ways. It's a need to know basis. Like, if you don't need to know, you don't need to know. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting it on your profile. But I think the hard part about doing that is you don't know what that means to a person. What are you trying to convey to them by putting that on your profile?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of conveying symptoms to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can say things like, sometimes I'm slow about getting back to messages, or like, you know, I get really excited about things, because that to me is more tangible for people to understand. Because if you meet one person with ADHD, you met one person with ADHD. So that label doesn't really tell anybody anything. And then once you feel comfortable, you can say like, I take meds, or I, you know, go to therapy for this. You know, the same thing you wouldn't necessarily put on your profile, like, I'm in therapy. Like,
I would rather see that on a profile. Listen, I want to know if you're taking care of your mental health before I date you.
It's true, but it's never there. And it's never there.
Yeah.
People never lead with that.
There should be like a box like on every dating app that's just like, are you in therapy? Like, yes, no. Like,
that'd be a great box.
Or like,
right.
I don't believe in therapy. And then you can just like screen those people out. Like,
I like the I don't believe. Because again, I feel like, are you in therapy? What does that tell you? I mean, what are you in therapy for? Are you in therapy for personal growth? Are you treating a severe depression? Which actually brings up another point, is that this goes beyond ADHD, but ADHD doesn't travel alone. It travels with multiple diagnoses. It travels with anxiety or depression or trauma. So I tell people, be cautious about recommendations from people to jump on a dating app when you're feeling down or after a breakup. I feel like dating apps are full of wounded people for whom someone said, get back out there, go date someone new. I would say take a moment and get yourself together, because the dating
sorry, that got me right in the funnies.
They're a gauntlet. They're a gauntlet. And it's not, if you're depressed, there's a chance that the dating app will make you more depressed. Get out, meet new people, sure. You know, build connections, work on your depression. But getting back out there is not always like the best strategy. It can make you feel worse.
I'm wondering, as we leave this episode, do you have any best practices across the board, online dating or not, for ADHDers looking to build meaningful relationships?
Yeah, if you're going to use the app, set boundaries with yourself. Decide what feels like a good frequency. Do you want to check the apps every day? Do you want to batch check it a couple times a week? And then stick to that. If you run into issues where you're feeling worse while you're doing online dating, I would either get off the app and or reach out to a therapist for support. online dating can be a mirror of challenges that you're having within yourself and in building relationships. So again, if you notice those things, if you notice you ending up with the same types of guys, that might be a good sign or a good cue that you might need to take a break and get support. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. There's coaches. Again, there's matchmakers. A lot of folks are out there, or there's books, right? You can do some reading, learn some stuff, and then revisit your approach to dating. And then I think specifically for ADHD, I think just remember that you have a lot to offer and that like everybody has things that they're great at and things that they struggle with. And you just need one person that's right for you. So I think it's really important to be authentic on the apps, to have pictures that look like how you look when you're not all dolled up. Just everyday pictures of you. It like you can still have some of the dolled up ones, but just like a normal shot is nice. And I think, find language to discuss your challenges with people and really focus on safety. Who feels like a safe person to connect with? And I think that's when you can share. Alternatively, if you do share, and a person makes you feel unsafe about having shared that identity, that's really good feedback. So if you do have it listed on your profile and someone has something really negative to say, it's a sign that you might not be a good fit. And then I would say, again, get other people involved. Online dating isn't something that we should do in isolation. So if you have an aunt, let them look at your pictures or like run the profile through them. If you have a best friend or someone that like knows you well, you could do that. And then the advice I always give to guys is like, get somebody to take some pictures of you. I feel like women do better, selfies, or when you go to events, everyone's always like posing. I think guys just don't have those natural moments.
Yeah. Take a picture of your bro. Take bro photos. Do it. Also, can I say the hottest take that I've ever said on this podcast? You don't put, if you have a picture where you're holding a fish, that's not to take it off your dating profile. I don't care about your fish. Take it off.
Unless it's working for you. Unless it's working for you.
Then use it. But like, I bet you have another picture of you where you're not holding a fish.
Yeah. And I would say that that's a great piece of advice to get cross-gender advice. So, because I think a lot of guys think pictures with fish or with their dogs, like, but I'm not dating your dog. I think
I'm the opposite. Immediately opposite. I was like, no, I want to see your dog. I don't even care about you. Do you have a cute dog? Cool. I will go on a date with you so I can meet your dog.
But I'm also not a dog person, so that probably...
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But like, if you're doing well and raking them in with the fish pic, you might find your lady that way. She might want to go fishing too.
But again, like, you don't want dogs. I want all the dogs. So this is going to be like a person to person. Yeah. It's just everybody's going to have their own opinion. So I think a lot of it also has to do with just trusting yourself, and just being like, hey, I really like my fish picture. Like, I'm going to keep it. Be authentic. Be yourself.
Yeah. And maybe all of them shouldn't be fish pictures.
Like deep sea fishing, for whatever reason, that seems really fun for me. I've always wanted to try that, but like river fishing, I grew up doing that. I'm bored of that. Thank you for listening. Anything mentioned in the episode will be linked in the show notes with more resources. Have a question, comment, burning story you'd like to share? Email us at sorryimissedthis@understood.org. This show is brought to you by understood.org. Understood is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering people with learning and thinking differences like ADHD and dyslexia. If you want to help us continue this work, donate at understood.org/give. Sorry I Missed This is produced and edited by Jessamine Molly and Margie DeSantis. Video is produced by Calvin Kinney. Our theme music was written by Justin D. Wright, who also mixes the show. Ash Beecher is our supervising producer. Brianna Berry is our production director. Neil Drumming is our editorial director. For Understood.org, our executive directors are Laura Key, Scott Koshier, and Seth Melnick. And I'm your host, Kate Osborne. Thank you so much for listening.